Check.
Everything was perfect, and
All I did was plug the fucking cable in.
you must have...
I didn't touch that.
Game was all the
I
way
know
down.
not to touch that.
It was all the way down. Somebody
Maybe
did it.
maybe that's why we show up in Film Reverie for months now. Why we're always quieter than the person we're interviewing. Because that's been weeks. That's been since December.
Was really low.
When you went off and we recorded remote episodes with you.
So you screwed it up when I left.
I didn't screw up.
That's what I'm saying.
It was always like that, even before we left here.
Always and forever, I'm sure.
Yep. You're not the one that has to edit these. So you're not the one that realizes all the shit that I gotta go through to tweak audio.
You know the first thing I would do if I thought, the audio's low. Let me check the microphone.
Well, we're never
to see why it's so low.
We're never recording when I'm editing. I'm in post-production mode. It's a luxury you don't have.
You could have just turned your head and it's right there. And you could have said, "Oh, look
You're
at
the audio person. You're sitting here tweaking things. I don't check with you. I don't check with you. You don't check with me. I'm sitting here editing, posting, all this stuff. You don't check with me on my stuff.
Why would I?
Because I got my shit under control. Now I know you don't have your shit under control.
Sure. At one time, it was under control. Then some person touched the knob.
It was one of those days your brain wasn't functioning yet, and you messed it up.
Sure.
Messed it up.
Yep. So, Film Reverie.
Okay, everybody, quiet on the set.
Film Reverie, take 74.
And action. Hello, Film Reverie listeners. This is Michael Beckemeyer, and as always, I am joined by
Poop Tart.
That's it. We've considered changing your Twitter handle recently. I think @PoopTart is the way to be. Is the way to go.
I don't know. It could be offensive.
To people who shit?
No, the tart on the end.
The tart, yeah. Yeah, but you're not saying...
I'm tired of poop. That's what I'm trying to say. We should say butter tart or tard butter, because I'm tired of butter. All right.
So, we have reached the end of basically phase 1 of our new batch of episodes, our curriculum episodes, where we wanted to talk about where we're going through and here's how we made our movie. So we wanted to start with the writing process, the stuff we were thinking about and working on and concentrating on when we were writing. And now we're talking about the actual writing of the script. We covered structure, we covered characters, we covered hero's journey, and all that stuff is stuff we were working on and thinking about.
Stuff that's in the back of our head that we don't necessarily... it's not conscious when we're writing the script necessarily.
Yeah, but because we've thought about this stuff. Yeah, it's like second nature, really.
It's second nature because we've used it for something.
So we just want to talk a little bit about the, how to write a script for a low budget.
Yeah.
And we don't mean sit down in front of your computer and type it in. We mean what we think about when we sit down and say, let's write a movie we can make.
Right.
So there's no way we're going to do an Avatar or an Inception or...
We couldn't even do a, it wasn't called Desperado. What was...
Mariachi. El Mariachi.
We couldn't even do a mariachi because we didn't have the... I could figure out how to do the bullets in After Effects or something, but...
We could figure out a lot of that stuff, but we figured what we should do is to make something that lent itself to our natural strengths, which is characters.
And would cost no money.
No money, yeah.
We got food and stuff, and sometimes we had to pay parking, but...
And gas.
We needed it to be just talking, actors, like you said, a play.
Yeah, kind of. I can't remember who said it first, but we sort of pitched it as a play, but a movie.
Yeah, we're not going to write anything in there that couldn't be done on a stage.
And if you think about it, if you're gonna write a play that is a movie, you need to that means you're leaning pretty heavily on things like dialogue, characters, performance, and dramatic tension. You're not going to have any explosions or what they would call eye candy.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to have anything to blow up a house or, you know, digital visual effects or anything like that. We wrote something that we knew we could make if it was just Brad and I by ourselves with a Mac.
And that required limiting the locations.
Limiting locations. So we originally had an idea that was a bad idea. But it was, I think I was like manic one day, and I'm like, Brad, we should just like make a movie that is like shoot it in a day, a 24-hour period, and we'll make our script flexible so that we can, so that no scene needs to take place at 3 a.m. But like maybe if it's 6 a.m. and the sun's coming up, or 7 a.m. and the sun's coming up, that scene could also take place then,
almost in order, but
right.
in a way that all the scenes that day could be done during the day, and when nighttime comes, we could do the...
So we decided that was not wise, especially since it was going to be our first feature film. We did not want our film to be... We didn't want to have to make excuses for our film. Well, we shot in 24 hours, so of course it's blah, blah, blah.
And we were using some fresh, unexperienced...
We were also inexperienced, and our crew was inexperienced. No one on set had made a feature film before. We had all done short films before. In fact, the actors that we worked with had all done short films. In fact, some of the roadblocks we ran into was the fact that most of our actors had done 15-page short films or something that you would shoot in a day or two, but we were shooting 15 pages a day. 10 to 15 pages a day, and then tomorrow when we came back, we shot another 10 to 15 pages every day for 9 days. So it turned into one of those things where it's like it's an endurance thing, you know. Mm-hmm. Maybe so it's like when you're used to running a mile, but today and for the next 9 days you have to run 5 miles. Like, can you do that? So you need to think about that when you're writing the thing. Like we should not have tried to make our movie in 9 days. But that didn't stop us because this schedule said you got to do this in 9 days or you're going to start to lose actors, people moving and stuff like that. Anyway, so we were thinking about all this stuff like that when we were writing our script. So we never kept the story takes place. We did not shoot the thing in 24 hours, but that 24-hour idea, like it's a tribute to, what's a tribute? Is that the word? Anyway, it's why you never like reject an idea, because the idea of shooting in 24 hours, we didn't keep that, but we kept the idea of a story that takes place over 24 hours.
Yeah.
Then we were able to do things like characters wear pretty much the same thing all the way through. We had a story that compact and happened within a day, and we didn't have to do a whole bunch of shooting in the daylight, nighttime, blah, blah, blah. We just literally had passage of time take place in our movie, and that helped tell our story visually, because you'd have sunrise in the morning, then we had sunset like 3/4 of the way through our movie, and then we had sunrise the next day. So you had almost 3 acts built into the sunrise, sunset, sunrise again.
Yeah. And so most of our movie took place in, even if it wasn't in the same apartment at the location, it was around the location, in the garage or outside. We could shoot everything there. And we planned it to where there was really only one other location that was outside on a bench. And there were 2 other scenes that we just decided, or no, that's like 3 to 4, that was going to take place either inside the car or sitting on the, with the back opened, and they're sitting in the back somewhere. So we knew we could shoot the car stuff pretty much any time or any day. There was one scene, a couple that had to be done during a day, but we could pick our day.
Yeah.
So that meant any off day if we needed to. That gave us our wiggle room.
Yeah. So we'll go into greater detail about pre-production and production in our next 2 phases.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we knew all this when we. So I think one of the things we could have been a little more flexible on ourselves is maybe a few more locations, because what happened is we had scenes that ran on longer than you would normally want scenes to run on.
Yeah.
Because we were trepidatious about breaking it up and going somewhere else. We stayed there, like a play would, where you'd have an entire scene that maybe is 10 or 15 pages that takes place over time. Things happen in there, and each of our scenes has a beginning, a middle, and an end, in a way. But when I watch our film, I think we were a little too cautious about locations, but we stuck to our guns, and we did that. So we're writing. What if this whole thing takes place in this house? And I know you've seen movies like that. I can think of like 10 Cloverfield Lane that takes place all in the bunker, things like that. However, those were genre films that had things happening, like aliens attacking and things happening outside that you don't know what's going on and stuff like that. Or even Night of the Living Dead, the original Night of the Living Dead. Most of it takes place in that like basement of that house, or a lot of it does.
And that reminds me, we sort of had being in the car as a plan B, because there was one scene. It was not, well, I guess it is a sex scene, but you don't really see anything. But it originally was going to be in a bedroom in the apartment. But because of circumstances, it was just easier to just make it in the car, or in a, SUV.
Yeah. And because of that, we were in that location for a good, long, significant period. A good, I'm going to say, 20 minutes of our movie takes place in that car in one way or the other. Maybe even 20 or 30 minutes of our movie takes place in that car in one way or another. So that is where I would say we could have branched out just a little bit for our own self.
Yeah.
But we kept our locations. We basically have a house, an apartment that the two main characters live in, and the surrounding areas like the parking garage, the outside of the building, and the car.
Yeah, because the car could be anywhere. It could be in our backyard if we shoot it right.
And it was. Yeah. It was in our front yard. But so we basically had like 3 locations in this entire thing. Yeah. So if you're going to do that, you need to lean real heavy on your character quality. I mean, the interest. How interesting are your characters? You keep your characters really interesting, and you keep your dialogue sharp. And like you don't want them to ever start going, "What are they talking about?"
So
like, so what are they talking about? And why are they sitting here in this car eating a burrito for 10 minutes? And like, you don't want them to do that. I've thought that about our movie, but I've seen it 1,000 times, and I get tired of the burritos. But it's only like a few minutes in our movie anyway.
And it's almost worth it because how it ends is
it's a payoff.
Charming.
We felt, and this is not us saying, hey, we're the best ever, but this is us, like, we knew what we needed to do if we were going to do that. Yeah. And we had to keep our characters, like, interesting, and have the dramatic tension between the characters be tight.
And, well, I also want to add that there's things like lighting issues, like being in the car at night is, sometimes a lighting nightmare.
Sometimes.
For low to no budget.
If you have no money, we just basically had the lights we had, and like at one point we literally just flipped the dome light in the car on, and like, well, that's what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And
we had to color correct in post-production.
Yeah, we had to do some color correction. But that's the other thing, is there's so much beauty in what you can do now with computers and like Premiere and all those things, what you can do now that you couldn't do even 5 years ago, especially 10 years ago, that you can do now. You can actually set a scene in a car at night, and with just a couple of lights and some color correction in your computer, you can make it look like something.
Yeah.
And we knew all this. So,
but by the way, it helped that we had production experience and knew lighting challenges we would have and such.
Yeah.
Because that reflected in our writing. We knew where we would have sound issues or lighting issues. And that reflected how we wrote and where we put things.
We were able to be strategic in how we did things. There is a good 18 or 19-minute section of our film that takes place at a birthday party, like someone's birthday party. And we knew that this was going to be our big, huge set piece of the movie, was a party scene. So we put all our money and we ordered some pizza and some red Solo cups. And that was our budget for set design and set decoration. And we got as many friends as we could to show up. I think we had something like maybe 15 or there's maybe even 20 people there that night. And we knew that we needed to shoot all that. Anyway, we knew that section needed to explode because of the payoff that we've been building up to for the first half of our movie, really.
So we're kind of skipping ahead a little bit, though, because we wanted to start with, okay, you have no money, or you're low budget.
Right.
So we're basically saying these are the things you want to consider.
Right. When you sit down to write.
Yeah. But limiting your locations, be dialogue heavy.
Yeah.
For example, the first Saw movie, they were able to be really low budget.
Yeah.
Because most of it took place in a room, and it was a mind freak.
Yeah. So we, by the way, there's nothing, we're not saying anything disparaging about action movies or anything like that. We just knew that we weren't going to be able to do that ourselves. So we landed on the comedy drama thing. Get some interesting characters in a room and have them be diametrically opposed to each other and let them fight it out for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Basically is what we did. It also lent ourselves to what we thought we could write well together. Mm-hmm. I write many things by myself really well, but you don't. So no. So we knew that we knew what we could write strongly, and we could write like we've talked about the characters, and if we're about to talk about character types of characters. So if you haven't listened to our 7 main characters in screenwriting, you need to go back and listen to that at some point. But
it's a 2-part episode.
Right, it's a 2-part episode.
We discuss everything about the 7 main characters we use in screenwriting.
Right. So we knew that we could write somebody that was kind of like me really well because I live and breathe that. Yeah. And we knew we could write somebody that was... We didn't really have anybody like you.
Right, but introverted.
Yeah, we did. Because the other guy was the sneezy character.
Right.
Yeah.
His character isn't my natural character, but we wrote it in a character that was close enough that he could play it.
So a lot of our writing sessions were a lot of our rewriting sessions were, well, what would you say if this had happened to you and you were really pissed, Brad? And Brad would say, well, I would say something like this. And we would toss out ideas and throw it around and say, okay, that makes me laugh the hardest. Let's write that down.
Yeah.
So really it's trying to find a way for, we didn't want to have a movie with really just 4 main characters who all sounded alike and looked alike and talked alike and idiosyncratically sat around and discussed life over coffee. We wanted people who were, if we're only going to have 4 people in our movie, we wanted them to be literally opposed, diametrically opposed in character and personality from each other. Yeah. So that this character rubs this character the wrong way, and then that character rubs him the wrong way as well. And then you have the other 2 characters who are balancing those 2 out, but also keeping them in their place. So there's I always describe it like when you're changing the tire on your car, you're supposed to tighten the lug nuts diagonally. Mm-hmm. So you tighten the screw diagonally. So to balance that screw out, you go diagonally down or across and tighten that one. You don't tighten around in a circle. So it's Paul Thomas Anderson talks about writing like ironing. You're ironing this out, and you iron it out just a little bit in front, and then as it smooths out, you go further and further out, so it's perfectly smooth by the time you're done. Mm-hmm. We were tightening the screws of our characters from page 1. We have a slow burn opening, okay? Aside from the 5-minute phone sex scene that Brad wrote and loves. But our character development is maybe the first 25, 30 minutes, like this person's saying this, working on this person over here is saying this, and having a problem with that. And we just let them sit there in the open for a little bit until about 45 minutes into our film when they collide. And we knew we could do that. We knew we could shoot that if we were to write it. And we felt pretty confident that we could pull that off.
One thing we probably didn't mention but should have was we also we took stock before we wrote the script. We took stock of what equipment do we have, who do we know that has other equipment that we need, and how much access do we have to that.
Yeah.
So we made the decision to do mostly natural lighting, so that helped us make decisions on where to shoot, because we shot in this place that had this big window, so that sunlight could just come in and drown the whole basement, almost the entire apartment, just with the one window. Not a window, but it was like the whole wall was nothing but window.
You would be surprised, and I've talked to other filmmakers we've had on this show about. I always, as a director, I always go in there thinking, God, we don't really have a whole lot of lights for this. You would be surprised at how many filmmakers have said back to me about that. Man, I haven't really used lights in 10 years on stuff. Like, there's just not always the budget for it. You gotta use a couple of lights and a couple of reflectors, but other than that, you just don't have the budget for a good. If you don't have the budget for a good lighting scenario, don't let that stop you from shooting your thing.
Yeah.
So we did, though. We tried to write scenes that took place outside during the day, which is why we have the whole car thing in the first 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. What we call the burrito scene. The stuff that takes place outside during the day, that was for budgetary concerns. Like, we could shoot that if we time it right with the sunlight and everything and a couple of reflectors. We could shoot that and not need lights.
Right.
So we were being, again, strategic about that. The script,
by the way, that also lended to the idea of the progression of time.
Yes.
The way we did the script, so that they were started out in the car. Now we have them in the back of a car in a park area, and then now they're in the car doing other stuff. So that we were able to.
Is that when they were doing drugs?
They weren't doing.
He air quoted other stuff.
But because we had it all happen in 24 hours, then made it easier to shoot them in sequence.
Yeah. So we thought about that stuff as we sat down and wrote, and we rewrote this thing more than anything I'd ever rewritten. Really, getting something ready for a production is you think. Here's the thing. A lot of times you sit down and you write something, and you think you're done with it. And then if you're thorough about your job, you read through it again and you start thinking, how are we going to shoot this? And as you're doing that, you are thinking, oh, well, this line doesn't really work because of a million things that have changed. So
even when you get with the actors, that was another rewriting session, because we got a little feedback from them, but watched them and how they were, and that informed more in the writing. That
goes more into pre-production, but yes, our rehearsal process informed the script, so we go back and rewrite the script some more. Mm-hmm. In fact, just on a side note here, we wrote this script and cast it 3 different times with three different groups of people. A couple of people remained constant the whole time, but we cast it with 3 or 4 different male actors throughout the course of the thing, but we rehearsed with all of them leading up to that, and every single one of the rehearsals informed stuff that we felt needed to be rehashed or deepened or addressed in the script. Like, oh, that line doesn't quite work, and then we started thinking, as we're hearing the words out loud, we're thinking, why are these 2 people this way? So it forced us to go back and rethink their backstory, and then then their backstory just informed the characters and the acting, but at the same time, also, there's a whole section in a thing where one character gives the other character the speech about his dad. Mm-hmm. That came out of us deciding that they weren't just roommates, but they were brothers.
Yeah, because one of the actors was having trouble finding
a reason
to be mad or be talking the way he was, or it's like, why
the guy was like, why am I living with this guy? I hate him. And then we're like, well, and then I think somebody said, well, they're brothers. Like, what if they were brothers? If they were brothers, would you stick around and feel like that? And it's like, well, if he's my brother, I would probably be more inclined to. And then we started thinking, if you're a brother, then there's a whole sibling rivalry thing. Just having the idea from a rehearsal or a read-through or just working with a couple of people to hear your words out loud lent itself back to, so they're brothers. Then there's sibling rivalry. So that, even though we had a lot of contention between those 2 main characters, now our contention had had like motivation behind it. And we went back and rewrote it again based on if they were brothers, what would they be arguing
that
about?
That one decision echoed all through the script from beginning to end.
And I feel like even though those two actors that were never in our movie, just rehearsed with them a few times and did read-throughs and worked on just the script together, just talking about it, made our script better. Mm-hmm. So it was a setback and disappointing that we had to recast the film and recast the film and recast the film. Each step of the way, I feel like our script got tighter because of it.
But I want to say that recasting the film didn't affect us too much because we started with our characters. That was one of the main things that when we sat down to write, because what their personalities was going to inform what they say and how they reacted. So we decided there was like 3 main characters, and then we thought, well, there's got to be one more.
Yeah.
And that's how we were able to last through all the recasting, because we would cast people who fit those. It wasn't like this. I think you sort of need to know your character and whether or not the person who is auditioning for that role can fit within that mold. Because some people will be more natural to that character than others. Yeah. And my personal opinion, but I think some characters, like a melancholy, for example, to make them play a happy, you know what I mean, or a sanguine personality, or even do a charismatic personality, right? Is a stretch, or even a bashful, so someone who's really quiet isn't going to be charismatic and wordy very easily or do that correctly necessarily. So it's good to know this is the mold I want this character or this actor to be in. So that helped us through that process with different people.
If you know your characters like the back of your hand, and whatever process you use to come up with characters, maybe you're going to write somebody just like your dad. That's fine. Whatever you're doing, stick to that. But if you know that, you have to know that character like the back of your hand, so that when you read your script, that line of dialogue on page 65, is something is right or wrong because it's something that your character would or would not say.
Yeah.
And then when you get into the production process and you start working with actors and stuff, that's how you know, because you've gone through this script 1,000 times, you know that character like as if that character is real. It's like someone you know. And then what happens is you know how to direct or coach or edit or the thing. It's like that's not something he would say.
Right, because you already know it's a melancholy or a bashful or a sanguine or whatever. And because of that, when your actors ask you questions that you haven't thought about before, you don't have the answer ready, well, you can say, oh, well, it's a melancholy character, so he would respond like this. Yeah. So that helps you in your directing because you already, you have this list of, you just know who the character is, even though it's a man, woman, or different age, you know that there's just certain rules they're going to go by.
So the other thing that we should have done better at with our script is I think our script needed to be shorter.
Yes.
Our script was 115 pages, and we shot that in 9 days, which means we had to do things crazy, like shoot. There was one day where we were trying to shoot 18 pages in a day. We did not get 18 pages shot, but we got like 12 or 13 pages shot, which is still more pages than I'd ever shot in any day ever. Okay, so we knew that section was our big set piece, and we knew we weren't going to get those actors all back together in the same place. So there was a big chunk we had to shoot in one day because we weren't paying extras to be there and anything like that. But our script in general could have been way shorter. Now, when you're writing a lot of dialogue like we were, it's very common for those dialogue scenes to take up more pages than they really take up in movie time. So like our 115 pages, and we cut almost nothing out of our film, and it's still 89 minutes long. So technically, in screenplay, writing rules, 115 pages should be almost 2 hours. But since we had so much talking, and we left a lot of the blocking and charactered actions open to like what we could do on the location that day with people. So there's literally he nods and it goes back to another 2 pages of dialogue, that sort of thing. But if our script was, so my advice to anyone who goes off and make a thing is keep your script as short as possible. Our script needed to be shorter because it would have been easier to shoot in the 9 days. We wouldn't have been so frustrated when scenes didn't quite work out because, by the way, we worked until midnight last night where we shot 15 pages. Now we're shooting 10 or 15 more new pages, different pages today. There's a lot of words. It's a lot of words and it's a lot of stuff that you have to pull off today, right now, in the next 10 hours, if your script is 115 pages that you don't have to do or worry about if your script is 85 pages or 80 pages.
We could have made it a little easier on ourselves if we went over it and maybe tried to trim dialogue and have people just do actions as opposed to speaking everything and relay it through silence. Because, all that dialogue is going to be difficult for your actor, whoever they are.
And it's difficult for shooting. It's difficult for, when there's that much talking, there's that much more coverage you have to get. And much
more room for error because two people or more need to do everything right. And
So just keep it short. Don't do like we did. Where
keep it simple is really what we're saying.
Dude, we set out to write a 90-page screenplay, and it started out there, and we kept adding to and tweaking. We removed some things, but then we would always add stuff that we continued to make it longer and longer. Don't do what we did and thought, we can do it. We can pull this off. Look, we were worried about making the movie, but we were confident we could pull it off.
We thought we could have them rehearse it like a play.
Yes.
Because the play goes live and doesn't stop until it's over.
Right.
And that was, I mean, all of our actors together were not able to do it like that. A couple of them were, but not all of them.
And the time it takes, and we didn't,
We didn't have all that rehearsal time. Everyone's working and everything.
If we had rehearsed with the same actors from the beginning, we would have been solid.
Yeah.
But we had to recast 2 times in between there. Literally, it took us 2 years, I think, just to get to the point where we were able to shoot the film. And then we shot it and worked on it for, so it took us like 3 years just to get the film in the can. So part of that was, and we in our minds were thinking, okay, 115 pages, but it's just 115 pages of dialogue. It's people talking. So we even shot with multiple cameras, reverse angles on everybody.
Which you originally didn't want to do.
Which I originally did not want to do, just because. I had never done it before, and it made me nervous on how we were going to control quality on both things. It turns out that I shot a camera, our DP shot a camera, and we just had to trust each other,
Yeah, and we ended up needing to do that because of all the actors not being able to get the dialogue, so much dialogue.
Yeah.
We needed to be able to, if they get the scene mostly right, we need to be able to cut to the other person because...
And it really does make things go faster. Shooting with multiple cameras, we're getting into production now, but shooting with multiple cameras, especially for low budget, if you can swing it, and we didn't have 2 of the same camera. I have a Canon DSLR, the DP Miles had another Canon, but it was a completely different kind of Canon. We basically just were like, we will try to give them as close as possible, and then match them in post-production as close as possible. And we were able to do it.
I mean, I think it's okay talking about the cameras now because we had to think about, you were the director and I was the producer, so as we were writing, we had to think about, can we do this with...
It's definitely changed how I wrote things since then that we wanted to shoot low budget, like on our own. Like the thing I wrote a while back, a couple months ago, I was like, I'm not writing another 115-page dialogue epic. I'm writing, so I was like, this is going to be 80 pages. Because really the other thing is when you're making an indie movie that with not much money, you can only sustain a certain length of time with people watching before it starts to feel like nothing's happening or There's not any eye candy. You know what I mean? So it's easier to sell a 3-minute version of a joke than it is to sell a 15-minute version of the same joke.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about our script having 15-page jokes in it, but it's like if you're telling someone a story, the 3-minute version is way easier to sustain their disbelief and all that stuff than the 15-minute version of the story.
Yeah.
People get distracted and conversation, all that stuff. That's the same thing with indie film, low budget indie film, and really any film. Like, you want to keep it as short and sweet as possible.
Also, we're in this day and age, it's ADD, you know.
Yeah.
Whatever you call it, short attention span.
Twitter.
You need to go from one thing to the next thing and not stay too long in one space.
So you have... it's the idea is, plus you're making a movie. If you're making a movie for nothing, how long can you sustain making a movie for nothing? For us, we shot our first section of our movie. We shot in 7 days, and then we had like a month in between when we shot that last thing, and then we got back together for the last 2 days. Those 7 days, that was about all either of us could swing with energy of just you and I kind of doing not all of it, because we did have help, but what I mean is like organizing and orchestrating the whole thing, trying to make sure our pages were ready the next day, and directing and cooking fucking dinner for the night for the next day and stuff like that. And all of that stuff, 7 days was about it. And we actually had days off in between. We'd shoot 2 days, and then we were off a day, and then we shoot for another day or two, and then we were off for a day.
And some of those off days were reshoot days.
And then we ended up having to give up some of our off days because we originally had an 8-day schedule, which was even crazier.
Right. But we're getting off of the script part.
But all of it is you need to be thinking about this stuff when you're writing your script. So really, we aren't really getting too far off track now that I'm thinking about it, because you need to. We're just giving you our advice on the problems we ran into with the problem we created for ourselves with the script that we had. So some of our stuff came out great because it was just actors acting. And we had a couple of cameras on it, and there are some scenes that just cut together exactly the way we wanted them to, and it was, you don't want to say perfect, but it was great. You watch it, and it's just like, this is exactly the movie I saw in my head. And then there are other things where it was like day 6 on the 18th hour of the day, and we shot this in one take because everybody was ready to fall over, and we were trying to do too much in one day, and all that stuff that I can at least look at and say, I wish we had like taken some more time to shoot that differently. But it's all because of the problem we created with the particular script that we wrote for ourselves.
Yeah. So I want to summarize. So start with the budget you have and the availability of equipment and people that you have. That was number 1. Number 2, at the very beginning, we needed to know our characters. So we originally thought, okay, 3 people. Then what? It's going to be a romantic comedy, I guess, or a drama.
We knew it was going to be a love triangle.
A love triangle. And then we thought, well, then we need one other character, kind of who's not any of these 3, but will give the more reticent character a tongue lashing, I guess. Like here,
whip him into shape.
Right. And that 4th character ended up being some of the people's favorite character when they watched the movie. So our characters were all based on. So, for example, one character we knew would be a melancholy, and there's another character that you and I both know well, which is the charismatic type. You have a brother that's charismatic, and I had a father, so we were really in the zone with that, and we knew how those characters would. What do you call it? How it would cause tension, and then we thought, okay, well then, so the girl needs to be trying to make everyone happy, kind of character, a peacemaker, which would be the sanguine or happy as we call it. And then the tell it like it is character, we decided would be choleric or grumpy. So that informed everything, how everyone reacted, what they said and did. So once we had our characters, which helped with casting, like we said before, then we said, okay, limited locations. So that was like one apartment building, which, by the way, we had 2 bedrooms. We just had like 2 bedroom scenes at the beginning. That was it, right? And we could have shot those anywhere, but we ended up being able to shoot it there.
There's another bedroom shot later in the movie where the guy's having his meltdown.
Right.
Somebody's having a meltdown. But yeah. So there's literally a couple of bedroom shots and then a main living area where they're.
It was very convenient to have it all in the same apartment.
Yeah. However, we got lucky that so there's 2 things. We got lucky that we were able to shoot all that stuff in the same location, even though they were supposed to be the same location.
Yeah.
But another thing we'll talk about in our production section or pre-production section is like locations not working out at the last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up having to basically get a whole new main location where 80% of our movie takes place. I'm going to say at least 80% of our movie takes place.
But
like the day before production. And so we let ourselves compromise a little bit on like what the place looked like.
The dream would have been to rent out a place, like the short film you did once, to rent out a place and have all the scenes happen in that place.
Yeah.
That would have been the easiest.
That would have been the easiest. But then you use the word rent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That costs money.
So are you done with your summary?
I think that's as far as we got. We limited the locations. Oh, and we worked with the amount of equipment and people that we had.
Yeah. Right. Look around. Make a list of your friends. Not you. You don't look around.
Your friends
Brad looked around. He's like, I'm looking what?
Right.
So look around at your list of friends. People
reliable,
dependable friends who you know who will come down this like torturous rabbit hole with you, and make a list of equipment, stuff you have access to. If you've only got a DSLR, fine. Like, do it. But write something you can make with a DSLR camera. If you only have your 2-year-old iPhone, fine. Make something you can make with your iPhone. Gone are the days of wondering if the iPhone or something like that is going to be high enough quality. It doesn't really matter, especially if you can work it into the aesthetic of your look and feel of the thing. Last year, there was a movie that came out named Unsane. I did not love the movie, but Steven Soderbergh decided, I want to make a movie that I shoot on the iPhones. And he figured the whole thing out based on that. Okay, if I was going to shoot this with an iPhone, how would I shoot it? And then he worked the whole movie around shooting it that way, and is an iPhone. It's a theatrically released movie that was shot on iPhones. It's incredible. So if Steven Soderbergh can do it, so can you, who nobody knows who you are yet, and work on your thing, and you just kind of figure out your way you're going to shoot it with an iPhone, if that's all you have. Mm-hmm. So,
and that also means computers and hard drives and all of that.
Right.
Because you have to, I mean, just more in the pre-production and production part, but I think a little bit in the writing process. You need to understand your workflow, I guess, is workflow. The point. From shooting it to editing it, you kind of need to have an idea of how that's happening.
Right. So just use your resources and know what your resources are going to be as you sit down and write. Now, that being said, this is how I will close out. Like, that being said, don't stick so close to everything that you don't feel like you're able to be creative with your idea. Yeah. Know that stuff and then throw it out the window while you're writing. And then if something's not quite right, you can tweak it later or fix it later. Or, by the way, how about challenge yourself to figure out how you're going to shoot this thing the section that you wrote that you might not know how to shoot yet. Like Robert Rodriguez, when he did El Mariachi, if you're an independent filmmaker and you have not read Rebel Without a Crew, you got to go read Rebel Without a Crew. This guy was figuring out how to make a movie while he did it. And he set out to make an action movie on film. Right. And he was having some guy slide down the electrical wires and slam into buses and crack windows and stuff like that. And I know that would have scared me. That would have intimidated me. How am I going to do this? I'm not going to write that. I'm not going to be able to shoot that. But he went out there with a camera and an actor and just shot it.
Yeah, that's another thing too. That's where we got the idea to shoot with what you have. He knew someone who had squibs. Yeah. And he knew stunt people. He knew he had the people around that he's like, oh, you know what? I have this idea. And I can do it with these people that I know. They have squibs and whatever. So that's sort of what we're saying.
Yeah, use your resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You make the movie, figure out what your resources are, and then make your movie around that.
All right, well, so that it? Said your piece?
I think so.
Yeah. I think we've covered this area. We're going to talk about this a whole lot more in the pre-production and production phase, and then post-production. So
maybe we can touch more on the personality stuff. I thought we would talk more about personality stuff in this part, but I guess that works out better in the hiring, or not hiring, but in the casting phase.
You mean personalities of the actors you hire?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that doesn't. Here's the thing about...
It helps.
It helps when you're hiring people or working with people to know what their characters are. However, I've noticed that half the time when you cast someone because they're a lot like a character, that half the time that doesn't work out for you. Because if they're too much like your character, then your character's problems are going to be coming to life right in front of you.
Which we had.
Yeah. And then if you do cast somebody who's like Tom Hanks, and you're casting Tom Hanks because he's an awful lot like this character you have, anything that's a lot like Tom Hanks, that's going to work out perfect for you because Tom Hanks is like the world's greatest guy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's 50-50. You just have to make, again, strategic, wise casting choices. Mm-hmm. Like they say, 90% of like good directing is casting. Cast the right person, and you don't have to really direct anything because you got the right actor in the right spot. That's a problem that we will talk about more, not because we want to say anything bad about our actors, but the problem I've had over the years making movies is, on the level that we're making movies, is you're casting people that might not come across your production and go, oh, I'm passionate about this. I love it. Some of them are just looking for experience. The way you're trying to get a movie made for experience, they're trying to get acting parts for experience. And you just have to like balance that out with, is this still the right person for this part? Or is this somebody that I'm casting because I only have two choices and this person seems closer to what I want. Like, you got to make good casting choices because you can burn yourself later.
And by the way, I think that should be here. This next thing should be what we close this portion with, is the main number one thing. As you were talking there, I realized the number one thing is after you've written your script, even after you've gone over it again and whatever, through the production process, you need to be open to I don't know, rewriting it. Like, it's not set in stone.
Yeah.
You need to be open to change when you're low to no budget and you're working with volunteers.
Yeah, you definitely can't be precious about it.
Yes, you need to be able to, like, we lost our location the day of shooting. So we had to figure out, okay, can we still do this, that, and the other? So you just need to be open with your script and be able to... it's not your baby. If you're low to no budget, you cannot decide that this script is my baby and we can't change a word. Yeah. And it's got to be like this. If you start with that, you're not going to get it made.
Yeah. But it's weird, though, because at the same time, you also have to defend it and guard it and not let stuff slide by just because, there's
you have your moments where you got to be stubborn and say, no, you got to say it this way.
Yeah. Or just, or like maybe you have to cut a scene because you couldn't get it shot. And do you really need that scene? Yeah, really think about it.
We almost cut a scene, but then had to put it back in because it motivated the next scene.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that later. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll talk about that a lot.
Right, but the point is be open.
Right, be open. Be open to everything. Be open to adding stuff. Be open to cutting stuff. Be open to like maybe envisioning it something another way. Every now and then somebody says something like that conversation, and we'll wrap it up here. That conversation we had with the actors. That weren't even in our movie that said, I don't like this guy. Why am I living with him? And that forced us to say, you're right. Why is he living? Why? Because I wouldn't live with this guy if I didn't like. Why would they be friends after? Like we said, they were friends, but why would these people be friends? They are viciously cruel to each other. They're like, oh well, they're brothers. That at least explains it a little bit.
Yeah.
It doesn't explain why I still live with you.
That's true.
Because you're not brothers, and I'm glad because that means one day maybe I'll break free. I won't have the bloodline tying me, strapping me down. Anyway, that's it for this time. Hey, we hope this helped you, and we realize that we bounced around a lot, but it's like a lot of this is like stuff that's in our memories from how we did it, and we basically wanted to sit down and just like regurgitate it here for you. We're going to have a couple of interviews in between the next section. Then we'll be back with pre-production.
Yes.
Pre-production, because we just talked about script writing and development.
Because without the planning pre-production phase, we couldn't have pulled this off.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, we pre-pro'd this thing eight different times. I rescheduled several shoot days.
With our producer leaving, what was it, the week before shooting?
Yeah.
So,
okay, so that's it. Until next time, go make something, and...
It's never the end, because you're always going to be a filmmaker. How about that?
And cut. Film Reverie Podcast is a production of Super Mega Ultra Entertainment and is produced by Michael Beckemeyer and Bradley Kingston. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to leave us a 5-star review in iTunes. And visit filmreverie.com to listen to past episodes, and be sure to click like or subscribe wherever you find us. That's it for this time. We'll see you again next week with another episode of Film Reverie.